Hello my viewers, welcome back to more Mushi League content. What I have here today is an especially spicy set for week 6 of season 15. Most people watching the games had very strong opinions about the gameplay and Pokemon choices from both sides. But before I get ahead of myself, I will mention that the Regi Runners were competing against A Flock of Smeargulls. Just like the last video, I was mostly running stall teams or teams that match up well against stall playstyles, as my opponent njaye had particular teams that posed the greatest threat to me during my preparation. njaye did not hesitate at all in bringing teams that aimed to perfectly counter teams I brought in previous weeks, and they tried their hardest to get the most favorable matchups. Like I said, this set was a little controversial and the spectators were all willing to speak their minds about each game, but I wasn't worried at all since this is a fun, laid-back league. None of what they said had ill intentions, and I had no animosity whatsoever. Anyways, how will I fare in the final week of the regular season? Let's find out. Without further ado, let's start the games. So, on the first turn, njaye leads with Jinx and I lead with Metagross. I decided to send in Cloyster to dodge Lovely Kiss, which in hindsight was a really big error because I really needed why am I saying Snorlax? Cloyster to set up spikes. So yeah. And on the next turn, Jinx uses Taunt, so I can't really set up spikes at all, which is kind of interesting. So I guess njaye got good information from the scout. Then I double switch to Metagross as Zapdos comes in, njaye is forced to switch in Swampert, but I send in Blissey, and now some actual actions going on. And I use Seismic Toss here. I send in Zapdos to dodge an Earthquake, and I threaten with Hidden Power Grass. Raikou comes in, so this is pretty much a Jinx lead special offense team, so there has to be a Duck Trio in the back. And the last mon is probably going to be like Celebi, Jirachi, or another Rock Resist. It could be a couple of things, but generally special offense teams are a bit more rigid than other types of teams, so there's a bit of some predictability going on here. I was actually lucky to nail the Toxic on this Raikou because that gives me an option to just stall it out. On the next turn, Raikou just keeps attacking with Thunderbolt instead of spamming Substitute or Calm Mind, so I roar to reveal Duck Trio early. I double switch here in case Duck Trio tries to use Rock Slide, and I force Raikou out with Gengar. Actually no, I double switch to Blissey. And then I realize this is a Jinx that sets up Calm Mind, and it only has one attacking move. I kill the Jinx with Meteor Mash, but at what cost? Yeah, I get trapped by Duck Trio, which is kinda bad to be honest. Now I have Salamence coming in, and I believe this is mixed. It is mixed. And I can just threaten pretty much anything that switches in. But then I have to switch out. And njaye makes a very strong play by switching Duck Trio here. But didn't you just see that skill-based play? I used Ice Beam and I critical hit the Duck Trio for all of its HP. That crit, for real though, that crit really mattered. Because if I did not get the crit, the Duck Trio would have survived and I would have lost my Blissey and by extension the game. So now, I mean granted my Blissey's at 25% HP, so njaye's gonna have to find a way to prevent my Blissey from healing, which shouldn't be too hard because Blissey's slow. Because if I heal up and attack, then it's gonna be all over. So you just gotta see what happens afterwards. Swampert comes into Revenge Kill, and I just switch out to Cloyster to burn Sleep turns. And that does not happen, unfortunately. I mean, I burned one, but I'm gonna need more than that. This actually puts me in a really precarious situation here, because look at the rest of my team that's alive. Zapdos is at 66% and can't threaten Raikou. Gengar's frail and can't really touch Raikou, especially after a couple of Calm Minds. Salamence is at full HP, but it's slower and weak to Hidden Power Ice. Although, yeah. And Blissey's at 31%, and I think I did the damage calculations. Blissey cannot switch into Raikou, because it can only take 2 Thunderbolts. So I think let's see what I do here. I send in Blissey, which was a big error on my part. Although if you look at the leftovers recovery, I potentially could survive another one, but I decided not to. I probably should have just sacrificed Cloyster there to be honest, but maybe I was worried about setup. Now my Zapdos is down to 20% here. But njaye makes a misplay by splitting... So I double switch here. I send in Cloyster to actually sacrifice it, but njaye makes a misplay by switching to Zapdos when Raikou could have just finished off my team. So this gave me some breathing room to find another outlet for Blissey to heal. Now Zapdos picks up Cloyster, and I send Blissey back in, and I did the damage calculations. Oh, Metal Sound, that was weird. Anyways, I was saying that I did the damage calculations, and Zapdos' Thunderbolt can only knock me out with a critical hit, because I believe this Zapdos is weaker than NJ's Raikou. So I heal up, and I'm back in the game. I send in Gengar, and Zapdos Baton passes, which is a little bit interesting here. And you never see Metal Sun on Zapdos anyway. I guess NJ was just doing some innovation here, which I respect it, Now Gengar, actually I switched Blissey back in, so I can just pretty much stall these special walls for the rest of time. Yeah, I'm just gonna skip a couple turns here, it's just, okay. I send in Gengar, and 2 Giga Drains are just gonna kill the Swampert here. Ooh, that Hydro took me pretty low here. Raikou comes back in to absorb Giga Drain, but if it doesn't have rest, the Toxic's just going to kill it eventually. Lucky Paralysis, but I've got Natural Cure, though it does force me to switch out. Well, I guess not yet. Luckily I didn't get paralyzed on the Wish turn. Oh yeah, I decided to stay in here because Swampert's Hydro Pump was most likely in mid-ground for either Gengar or potentially Zapdos. But if I got Earthquake, that would have looked like a terrible play. So I decided just to stay in, take the Wish, and bring Swampert down to low HP. Now Suicune comes in as I continue spamming Seismic Toss. Yeah, NJ pretty much has no chance to win this game unless they pull off a miracle or get really godlike RNG with Paralysis. What they need is for me to have Blissey as my last Mon so that Zapdos can spam Metal Sound and just spam special attacks, but that's probably not going to be the case here. And yeah, this frozen Zapdos is pretty bad. That was really unfortunate for NJ, and that just gives me a free opportunity to set up Rest and go back to Blissey and use Aromatherapy. Okay, not on this turn, but on the next turn. Oh, never mind, I don't have Aromatherapy on this Blissey. What am I saying? I thought I did. Anyways, I set up a Wish again, and I anticipate Ice Beam here, so I decided to... Oh, guess not. NJ forfeits here, because, yeah, Earthquake needs like a couple of critical hits to take down Blissey. Other than that, I just walled the Legendary Beasts endlessly. So yeah, that was a relatively quick game 1, and pretty much the deciding factor was the critical hit on Dugtrio with my Blissey. Had that not happened, I would have lost 100%, though I could have probably played better by sacrificing someone else besides Cloyster, maybe Metagross, so that I can get some spikes up so that the matchups would be a lot better for me. But this is only the beginning. We've got 2 more games to cover. Now this is where things start getting a little controversial. By controversial, I don't mean it's a huge scandal per se, but the spectator chat was definitely more lively than normal. In the second game, I brought a physical offense team that did have a Blissey in the back to give my fighters some breathing room with recovery and such. In other words, it aimed to break defensive cores while not trying to sweep as soon as possible. Let's see how this one unfolded. So this time, we got a slacking lead and I lead with Metagross. And I have to immediately switch into Salamence fearing Earthquake. Yeah, Choice Band slacking has very little counters. I mean, it has Skarmory, I guess, but Skarmory can take a lot of damage from Focus Punch or something. And it can also get cheesed by like a Surprise Flamethrower or Encore or whatever slacking's got. But you see why slacking is almost never used, because of its Truant ability. It just has to switch out after hitting something, which makes it very, very exploitable. To avoid loafing around, NJ sends in Suicune and threatens my Salamence with Ice Beam. I send in Blissey on the Suicune, and NJ makes a very smart double switch here. Swampert's my go-to special or physical tank here, so... And you can, as you see, that Earthquake did a lot of damage. If Slacking just went for a hard double edge there, I would have been in big trouble. But yeah, that double switch from NJ was very, very strong. If NJ can pull that off many times, that Slacking can just break open my entire team within a couple of turns, which would be advantageous for NJ's teammates. Now in response to that, Ninjask comes in, which is a very, very controversial Pokemon. A lot of people don't like Ninjask's presence in the metagame because it passed speed boosts and substitute really easily. But this is a Cursed Swampert, so I have some leeway against it. So I just set up Curse here, but then Ninjask tries to use Toxic. It fails on the first time, but it's only a matter of time until I get Toxic on this Cursed Swampert, so I have to act fast here. Sadly, I don't have any physical moves aside Earthquake, so I just have to spam weak, non-stab Ice Beams. I just keep spamming Ice Beam even though there are Protects being thrown. Eventually, Ninjask is going to Baton Pass to a hard hitter. But I use Rest now so that the Toxic damage doesn't accumulate, but that makes me really exploitable, as you see right here. Suicune comes in, and I'm still sleeping, and now I have to send in Blissey. Suicune getting past speed and using Calm Mind to boost its stats would make it become an unstoppable juggernaut later on, so it's up to Blissey to just hang with this guy, pretty much. And I think the Suicune also has 101 HP substitutes, so while I can break the sub now, I would need 2 attacks to break through these substitutes, which is really, really bad. I had that happen in a previous week. It's not fun whatsoever. Oh yeah, I also sacrificed my Tyranitar here. Actually, I don't sacrifice it, but I switch it, and which sounds like a bad play on the surface, but I literally just needed to set up Sand, and I sacrificed my Magneton instead, because I don't think I'm going to need that. And now it's just Blissey against the +4 Suicune. Just chipping it down as much as I can until I die to Surf critical hits and stuff. If it just attacks me, I would be in a really dire situation. So njaye was playing too conservatively here, which works for me, so I won't complain. That crit definitely mattered. Now we have a Surf here, but I use Seismic Toss instead, so the Suicune does die, but that's only at the start of the battle. Ninjask comes back in, and I should have Soft Boiled on that turn, to be honest, but I was probably predicting Toxic or something. That was definitely not the best play I made there, though that's hindsight bias. Ninjask Baton passes speed as I Soft Boiled, which is a very good play here. Now, again, I have to make a... Oh! njaye makes a great double switch here. So, it was unclear what Slacking would have done if it stayed in, so I would have been hard-pressed to just try to stop it as much as possible. I would have lost a lot of HP on one of my Pokemon, but luckily I was able to intimidate the Ninjask as the Ninjask switched in, so whatever comes in will be a bit weaker. And on the next turn, I send in Swampert here, just so I can burn some of the sleep turns and boost alongside this Ninjask here, but njaye makes a really bad play, but understandable, probably because he miscalculated. That substitute brought Ninjask HP so low that it was just enough for Sandstorm to kill it, which really sucked for njaye. njaye probably thought Ninjask would live at 1 HP or something like that, and if that was the case, that would have been a pretty strong play. So yeah, that's no more Speed Pass. Now, I forgot Truant mechanics worked, where if Slacking got sent in after a Pokemon got knocked out on a Truant turn, it has to recharge, but I'm not complaining. Now I get a strong hit with Earthquake, as Slacking was loafing around, and I just 2-hit KO with Earthquake after Double Edge Recoil. So that's a crisis averted. Now here comes Marowak, ready to set up Swords Dance, but actually it Earthquakes, trying to revenge kill. So I have some wiggle room here. Magneton comes in on the Hidden Power Flying, and I can surely KO it with Earthquake, and that's exactly what I do here. Now Smeargle comes back in, and here's where I make a crucial misplay. I send in Tyranitar to absorb Sleep instead of Metagross, because I thought Metagross was faster and Tyranitar was useless, but it was actually the other way around. And this is going to matter, as you will see. A substitute was passed to Marowak, and now the rest of this game is pretty much filled with mind games. It's either Marowak uses Hidden Power Rock, or it uses Swords Dance on whatever Pokemon I switch in. Or, I guess, Earthquake, if I have Metagross in or something like that. So, because of this misprediction, Marowak is now at +1 attack, and my hidden power flying from Salamence, I had a chance to 2-hit KO it. I don't remember the exact number, but I had fairly good odds to 2-hit KO it. But I ended up switching out to Blissey just to sacrifice it so I can get Salamence back in to intimidate it. Then I go for Hidden Power Flying, anticipating Swords Dance, but Marowak uses Hidden Power Rock to bring my Salamence pretty low. Now I have to send in Swampert to sacrifice, but I mean it takes Hidden Power Rock, but it's gonna die to Earthquake. Or Double Edge, that works too. Now I send Salamence. What I'm trying to do is get Metagross to come in while Marowak's at -1. But njaye makes a great play by sending in Smeargull as a sacrifice, and now it's 3-on-1. Now I had to go for the Hidden Power Flying because I thought that I would not have another opportunity to do it, so I figured I'll just take my chances now and hope I get the roll, and I did not, which really sucked. I could have also went for Rock Slide, but I had a higher chance of getting the high roll with Hidden Power Flying, so that was really, really bad for me. And now I just lose because I forgot Tyranitar was faster. So if I slept Metagross instead, I could have actually finished it off. But yeah, I just died to 2 Earthquakes, which really made me sad. Honestly, what should have happened was I should have lost game 1 due to Ice Beam not critting and getting blown over by Suicune and Raikou, and I should have won game 2. So the game that really mattered at the end is the third one. In the third game, let's just say there was some bit of controversy, which you will see as the game unfolds. Lastly, here comes the tiebreaker. This is where tensions ran wild, not in a serious way, all things considered. And both of our teams had some people posing questions. This time, I ran a dedicated semi-stall team, expecting one from njaye as well. And the team njaye used in Game 2 was really controversial. Not a lot of top Generation 3 OU players like Ninjask in the tier, because it can easily baton pass speed to other Pokemon, enabling strategies that can auto-win if the matchup is just right. It's a lesser extent compared to full baton pass change from later generations, but the resentment remains. So in this game, njaye leads with Slacking and I lead with Aerodactyl. For the team that I brought, leading with Aerodactyl was the best choice. On the first turn, I immediately switch in Skarmory to take whatever hit Slacking has to throw at me. And luckily for me, the recoil damage is going to add up over time. njaye decides not to play any games and immediately sends in Ninjask as I set up spikes. Next turn, Ninjask uses Substitute and I roar right away, and Suicune comes in. I was originally thinking that njaye repeated the same team as they did in Game 2, but I didn't immediately want to jump to that conclusion, because I know Ninjask teams have some variety to them in terms of movesets and Pokemon. Over the next couple turns, we just do some switching, and the next course of action is the next turn after where I send in Skarmory, and Marowak gets a really clutch critical hit against me, which is actually really important for njaye, which means that my Skarmory can't really handle a lot of physical threats anymore. But you'll see later how I worked around this. Things get worse as when I send in Swampert, Marowak sets up with Swords Dance, and I basically have to pivot around Marowak's attacks so that I can get Zapdos in and Toxic it. And thus I have to sacrifice my Rising Volt's HP to actually get farther in the game, which means I'll have a harder time against Suicune. Also, a side note, when you're using Marowak on a Speed Pass team, you generally don't want to use Marowak earlier in the game to bust holes in the team, because the whole premise is you get the opponent's team weakened with your other mons so that Marowak can set up Swords Dance once and sweep the rest of the game, which is what happened last game. I understand that there's some cases where your win condition has to come in early because you have no better choices, but with Speed Pass teams, that kind of stuff is a lot more strict. As in, compared to most other teams, you need to have a really good reason to have Marowak in against a Pokemon when you're not ready to sweep the rest of the game. Next, I send an Aerodactyl on the incoming Double Edge or Earthquake, and oh my god, that did 98%. If Marowak got a slightly higher roll and knocked out my Aerodactyl, who knows how much more trouble I would have been in. Although the toxic damage is adding up. Magneton comes in, which is really, really shocking, no pun intended. I used Double Edge here just to get a clean hit on whatever switched in, or if Marowak wanted to sacrifice itself. But the thing with Magneton, however, the reason why it's on a team in the first place is to trap and knock out Skarmory, or Fortress, so that its teammates can launch physical attacks against everyone else with impunity. Ideally, it should have came in earlier so that njaye had an easier time passing its boosted speed while the Skarmory was out of the picture. One could argue that I had a Duck Trio in the back to counter-trap the Magneton, but it was unlikely that I'd make such a double switch given the early game state. Now I need to switch Blissey in whatever mid-ground attack Magneton throws at me. Expecting a switch out, I use Toxic, which lands on the Slacking, though it would have been just as ideal if I landed the Toxic on the njaye or the Suicune. Though for Slacking, now that it's been on a timer, it will have fewer opportunities to attack my teammates. Now what I need to do here is sacrifice my Magneton to whatever Slacking throws at me, and it uses Double Edge, chipping itself even further. And I knew it was going to switch out, so I used Hidden Power Fire as a middle ground in case Marowak switched in. However, the Magneton switch from njaye was actually a big mistake. It was as if they wanted to sacrifice the Magneton to get a free switch. But now njaye has no way to trap the Skarmory for a guaranteed KO. To be fair, my Skarmory's HP was pretty low, so it could not take another physical hit, but it could still do something against njaye. Furthermore, njaye decided to switch in Suicune against my Magneton. Depending on the speed stats, which is impossible to determine on this turn, I could have been unexpectedly faster and finish off Suicune with Thunderbolt. But since I expected Suicune to be faster if it came in on a Magneton, I chose to switch out. And what? Another double switch to Slacking? So now I sacrifice my Magneton, and Slacking uses Shadow Ball, which is a very, very safe mid-ground, with very little upsides, and the people that were spectating were definitely questioning that choice. It gets better though. Now that Skarmory got in for free, I get a free turn to use Rest as njaye comes in at almost a cosmically perfect time. When a Pokemon like Claydol or Skarmory uses Rest unconventionally, you know it's a dedicated stall team. It also happens to be the ultimate counter to njaye's cheese strats. njaye still has the upper hand however. njaye uses Substitute on the switch, and then I use Aromatherapy as njaye uses Protect to wake up my Skarmory. Afterwards, I switch back in Skarmory at full health and let njaye Baton Pass to what ended up being Smeargull. This is good for njaye, however I anticipated Smeargull using Spore, so I sent in my most expendable member thus far, Swampert. Followed by sending Skarmory back in as Smeargull Baton Passes to Suicune, further gaining momentum. So now's where the battle takes a massive turn. As you see here, Suicune has +2 speed and a Substitute Pass to it. If it Calm Minds a few times, it can reasonably finish the game on their own. You might be thinking, can't Skarmory roar it out? And ordinarily, yes, I would do that. However, if this Suicune also has Roar, it can beat me to it and set up in my teammates' faces. Unfortunately, njaye makes a huge misclick and clicks Calm Mind instead, so I get the Roar off for free. And now njaye has to spam Silver Wind in order to make progress back. And unfortunately that's not going to work out because I can Roar at any time. The Silver Wind does get the stat boost on the second try, but it really doesn't matter, as after I get 3 spikes up, all njaye can do is just try again later. Okay, it's stalling me with Protect, but that doesn't really matter. It tries to Silver Wind again, which was probably not the best play, and I just Roar in Marowak. And because of that one mistake, this game is now mine to win. This time I take the Hidden Power, and I Roar out into Suicune again. Now this Marowak is going to die upon re-entry. Suicune decides to Surf, expecting a Roar, but I catch that assumption and I Toxic the Suicune. Whether or not that makes a difference is yet to be seen. Afterwards, I let Skarmory take another Surf and rest up. I then repeat the process of sending in Blissey and using Aromatherapy. njaye has another chance to Baton Pass some stat boosts. Once again, I send Skarmory in as njaye goes for Substitute, and on the next turn, njaye Baton Passes into Slacking, and the Slacking dies upon Spike's entry. That's a very creative way for me to not have it take an action that turn and send in Smeargull safely, so I come in njaye for that. Swampert absorbs Spore again as I got healed recently, and then I go back to Skarmory as Smeargull reveals Wish, which I did not anticipate one bit. Marowak dies upon getting roared in, and Suicune takes the extra HP, which I don't mind too much to be honest. It still is on a timer as we speak. Suicune surfs again, and I roar, presumably predicting Calm Mind or something. And Skarmory pretty much just does this. Well, actually, I use Toxic and it fails, as Smeargull also revealed Substitute. So this set is Spore, Baton Pass, Wish, and Substitute. Definitely a set, definitely a combination of 4 moves I've not seen yet. In my Generation 3 OU competitive journey. Also for the record, njaye only has one win condition left, and that's Suicune, and if Suicune doesn't have a way to rest up and heal its poison, it's kind of toast. And it's gonna struggle breaking through Aerodactyl and Blissey. Smeargull wishes and I roar, so now it becomes unusable as well. And I make a mistake here by switching in Swampert as Ninjask goes for Silver Wind. If a Baton passes a stat boost to Suicune along with the +1 speed, that might have actually put njaye in a good last-ditch Hail Mary position to try to reverse sweep me. Luckily I did not get the boost. But hold up! njaye lost due to inactivity? What? I ended up waiting 5 minutes for them to return, but I ended up winning out of nowhere. Some people speculated that njaye rage quit and left me to suffer, and they were all not happy about that. Others thought that their power went out. Either way, it was unfortunate that things ended this way. There was some fallout in the spectators chat that I read after completing the set, but it didn't leave any lasting hatreds between anyone. Ninjask teams are medium risk and high reward, and if played optimally, they can win many games on the spot. Based on my review of the gameplay, njaye had room for improvement. Especially the Calm Mind misclick on Suicune in Game 3. I would have kicked myself if I did that as well. To set up the ideal endgame for a guaranteed sweep, and I definitely picked the wrong Pokemon to sacrifice to sleep-inducing moves. If I wasn't on autopilot, I could have better prepared for longer games too. Had everything went smoothly from both sides, njaye would have won Game 1, I would have won Game 2, and njaye would have won Game 3, so njaye kind of deserved the win. Thus, you could argue that me winning this set was controversial. If you agree or disagree with that sentiment, leave a comment. If you don't mind either way, pick a side anyway. Comments are good for the YouTube algorithm. I have one more set that I played this season, and it was in the semifinals. If you don't want to miss out on that, then subscribe to my channel. Anyways, my viewers, I hope you enjoyed my Mushi League content so far, and I'm excited to make more videos. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.